It's time to stop being silent about this. It's time to start this conversation because I know I'm not the only one feeling this way. Time has sped up, and it not only sped up, but it has sped up drastically, specifically over the past 5 years. And it seems to be a common trend with things over the last 5 years kind of going out of control. But let me know down in the comments below if you've noticed this. And I know you have, because I've heard more and more people talking about this, young and old. Because that's the thing, is that most people will say that, well, time speeds up when you get older. Or maybe our perception of time speeding up as we get older. It does happen. It's a actual phenomenon that does occur. But this is much more than that, because there are young people and old people experiencing this. It seems like everybody is experiencing this. I've noticed it more specifically after I've retired from the workforce. I retired last year at the age of 39 in 2024. And prior to that, I was a project manager for a large corporation. I was responsible for managing projects all around the world. And as a project manager, doing that, you have to be very mindful of time. You have to know how to manage time. And I was very good at managing time. So I'm very used to this. I'm very good at managing time. I'm very good at budgeting for time. I'm very mindful of time. And when I was doing all that, it's easy to get in a flow state, because whenever you start doing something that you're passionate about, or you lock in on something that really needs to get done, you do enter a flow state and time just passes, basically in an instant. So that's a common thing. But now that I'm retired and I have all the time in the world on my hands, you would think that I would feel like I have unlimited amounts of time, because I'm not obligated to be anywhere or do anything, especially anything I don't want to do. So you would think that time would move much slower, but it has been the opposite. Time has actually sped up, and it continues to speed up every single day. And back then, I was able to get all my work done at work, come home and still be able to manage my property. I have animals to take care of. I've got a huge yard to cut. I've got fields that need bush hogged. I got a lot of stuff to maintain. Somehow, I was still able to do all that work, plus maintain what I have to maintain here. But now that I have all the time in the world to do all the things that need to be done, I find myself still scrambling to find time to do all the things I need to do without the work. And that's not to say I'm not working, because I am doing work. So I still get in the flow state, and I still have things that I'm doing throughout my day besides, stuff around the house. But fact remains, time goes by much faster. I mentioned this to my parents and other people I've talked to. And matter of fact, when I was talking to my parents, that's one of the things I brought up. I was like, I don't know how I ever got all this stuff done when I was working. And especially because I was traveling, because I used to travel like 50 to 75% of the year. And I was still able to get all this stuff done. Now, granted, when I was traveling, I had somebody cut my yard and stuff like that. But I was still able to get everything that needed to be done. And I'm not the type of person to sit around and just not do anything. I'm always up doing something. So I'm making progress towards stuff every single day, but somehow time is slipping away. And it seems like just yesterday, it was 2020, and now we wake up, it's 2025. As a matter of fact, 2025 has gone by so fast, I almost can't even remember the things that have happened in 2025, because it seems like just yesterday, it was January. Now we're almost at the end of July, which is, again, freaking baffling. So again, let me know down in the comments below if you've experienced this. Are you dealing with this same issue that I think a lot of us are facing, where time just seems to be passing by so fast? I feel like one day we're going to wake up and we're going to be on our freaking deathbed. It's actually kind of scary, because maybe that is going to happen. Maybe we are going to just wake up one day and it's going to be, we're at the end of our life. We're 80 years old or beyond, and we're like, where the heck did time go? And the crazy thing about this is that it feels like every day that passes, time speeds up even faster. So you're left wondering, where does it end? Are we just going to get to the point where time just slips away completely, and we literally do go to sleep one day and we wake up and it's 5 years later or 10 years later? And as a matter of fact, just to throw some science into this, because there actually is some science to this, there was an article that was just released like a week or two ago showing that the Earth is spinning faster, and the shortest day of all of history, recorded history, is about to happen, because the Earth is actually spinning a little bit faster and the days are getting a little bit shorter. So it's a very real thing. Now, granted, the Earth is spinning like microseconds faster, But how does that translate into our daily lives? And are there other factors that are leading into this? Because again, it seems like within the last 5 or so years, this has increased dramatically. It's not something that has just been slowly, gradually building up. Maybe it has for like 10 or so years. But within the last 5 or so years, it seems like it's getting much faster. And there's all these things that have happened and probably is playing into this over the last 5 or so years, that it seems like everything's just kind of coming to a head. You've got all this conflicting and contradicting information. Black is white, up is down, left is right. Everything's backwards. Everything is just so confusing, and things are happening so fast, and the world is changing at an unprecedented rate. You can't help but wonder, do all these things play a role? And then to go a little bit further out there into left field, then you also have CERN. And you've got all these crazy black projects they're doing, trying to create black holes and split atoms and travel at the speed of light and reverse time and, all this crazy stuff they're doing. You have to wonder, does it play a role? Because then you have Mandela effect that tacks on top of that, where all these things that we believe to be true, and we have these deeply held beliefs and memories of all these things that happened, and then all of a sudden our present moment is telling us they never happened. Or what we're remembering is completely false, which some of those things absolutely blow my freaking mind, because I have some deeply held memories that have been proven to be wrong through Mandela effect, and it just splits my mind open, because what exactly is happening? And I feel like this whole time thing, with time speeding up, it has to tie into that. It has to play a role. Or maybe this is just mass psychosis. We're all just believing that things are screwed up and our timeline is messed up, and that's causing it to be messed up. We're creating the reality around us. It's really hard to say exactly what's happening, and it's kind of hard to comprehend, honestly. But there are a few things that I do believe play a major role into this, and I would say that technology, the internet, social media, I talk about this a lot, but I do feel like that's playing a role, because when I talked about the flow state, I used to get in when I was working, and I still get in. I think most of us get in flow state when we're working on something very passionately. Social media actually puts you into that flow state, because when you immerse yourself into your screen, into your phone, and you're just scrolling content, you lock into that and you essentially get into a flow state. Now, it's not a good flow state, it's not productive, but we do enter one. And when you enter those flow states, time does pass. I mean, hours can pass just like that in a freaking instant. So I do think that's playing a major role. Anything that has to do with the internet, I think if you're immersing yourself in that too often, and you're looking at social media and the internet and your phone and stuff too often, that is going to make time pass very quickly. And I can say that from experience, because it happens to me sometimes. Sometimes I open my phone, I start scrolling social media, or I start answering comments, and before you know it, 3 or 4 hours has passed. And that freaks me out, because I'm like, I could have swore I just sat down. There's no way I've been sitting here 3 or 4 hours. But I think there are also other factors. I think that the fact that we're inundated with stuff 24/7, and I'm not just talking about stuff, I'm talking about all the crazy stuff going on in the world around us. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on, and it's just being pumped at us every single day. Mainstream media, social media. I mean, a lot of people buy into these narratives and stuff that are being pushed, and people talk about that in social media. So not only is it being pushed out by the people in mainstream media, but it's also being pushed out by us, because we're talking about these things. And the fact that we're dealing with all this stuff, and a lot of times it can just feel so overwhelming, and a lot of times we just want peace. We just want to be like, I'm done with this. I'm done with the world. I'm just going to walk away from it all. I feel like that can make time pass by very quickly, because we're so focused on all these little micro things, all these things that largely are out of our control, things that are going on the other side of the world, things that don't really involve us. We get so fixated on these things and we focus on them, and it's not really productive. But I feel like that is probably kind of putting us in this flow state, or at least is taking our mind out of our present reality and is putting it into the phone or into something else. And because we feel so hopeless and we feel so helpless because we don't really have any control over these things, it can probably make time pass by much quicker, because we're not in the present. We're not living in the present. We're living everywhere else except our reality. And that's kind of a bad thing, because if we're not living in our present moment, we're not living in reality, what are we doing? What exactly are we doing? Are we just going to go our entire lives not focusing on the beautiful world around us, not focusing on our own lives or doing anything to benefit or better ourselves. I feel like that by focusing on all these things around us that we don't have any control over is causing us to get tired. It's like we're entering somewhat of a dream state. And when we enter that dream state, I'm sure y'all know that when you're dreaming, time goes by extremely slow in the dream. It seems like that you're living out a full day in your dream, yet you've only been asleep like 5 minutes. So it makes sense that times that should feel like hours now feels like minutes. And I really do think it's because we're in this weird dream state. We're in this little bubble, this messed up timeline where we've blocked everything out and time is just passing us by. And there's a lot of people that have actually pointed to certain prophecies because the Bible actually mentions this. The Bible talks about how in the end times, days will become shorter. Is that what we're experiencing? I hope not. I hope the end is not near. But something is definitely going on. Something has changed. Something has shifted within our timeline. It's getting very, very hard to ignore. And that's why I think it's very important to have these conversations, because it's easy to think we're alone in this. It's easy to think that we're the only ones experiencing this. And sometimes we don't want to bring it up because we don't want to seem like a freaking crazy person. But it's very comforting to know that we're not alone. And I would say that when it comes to most of these things, we are not alone. But if that is the case, how do we combat this? Because there has to be a way to undo this. I mean, let's just think about this logically. If it actually is cell phones and technology, the obvious answer is to distance ourselves from these things as much as we possibly can. And I do believe that is going to slow time down, because I can tell you there's been times in my life pretty recently where I completely ditched my phone. I disappeared off into the mountains. I went hiking. I immersed myself in nature, and I walked around in the real world, seeing things without a lens, without a screen in front of my face. And I can tell you for certain, those experiences are the number one things that have slowed time down for me. So maybe it's as simple as that. And maybe it's also as simple as not getting caught up in this hustle culture. Because like I mentioned many times before, when you get in this flow state, time's going to pass you by. So a flow state can be a very good thing to get into, don't get me wrong, especially if you're working towards something. But if you can make time to get out of that and actually be present, from my experience, that is also going to slow time down, and it's going to ground us back into reality. And I think that is the key here, is grounding ourselves in reality. And I think it's also equally important to realize that there are some things that are simply out of our control. And we have to be okay with that. We have to find peace in that. That's not to say that we need to stop trying, but maybe not just stress and obsess over it so much. Because fact of the matter is, there are things in our lives that we can control. And that is our own life. That is our reality. We can make changes to shape that reality into whatever we want it to be. And that really ties back into grounding ourselves in our reality, in our own reality, and not spreading ourselves so thin, worrying about all these things that we simply don't have any control over. So let me know down below if you've experienced this, and if there are certain things you're going to do to try to slow things down. Because I truly believe that if we don't do something, and at least try to slow this timeline down, we're going to wake up one day and the world that we knew is going to be gone, and we're going to have been thrown into this new timeline that we don't even recognize, and we're going to be wondering where the heck all the time went. And you know, the more I think about this might actually be a good thing. Maybe this is someone's way of telling us that if we have dreams, if we have goals, if we have ambition, we don't need to wait. We need to go after it, because apparently time isn't going to wait for us. So if there's something in life that you've been wanting but you've been putting off, you got to ask yourself, what are you waiting on?